Diego Ramirez had never truly healed from the loss of his only daughter, Elena. She was just 10 years old when tragedy struck, and from the moment he laid her to rest, his life was forever altered. Days blurred into one another, but it was the nights that haunted him the most. 7 months after her burial, the dreams began. Initially, they were vague, mere glimpses of her face and her voice softly whispering in the wind. But soon, they grew more vivid and terrifying. Each night, he found himself seeing Elena, crying and reaching for him, pleading for him to rescue her from her grave. "Papa, please, I'm still here. Don't leave me," she sobbed. Diego would wake up in a cold sweat, his hands shaking, his heart pounding in his chest. He told himself it was grief playing tricks on his mind. But the dreams never stopped. In fact, they grew worse. During the day, he began to hear faint whispers, almost like his daughter's voice calling him from somewhere unseen. Objects in his house seemed to move on their own. At night, he swore he heard soft knocks on his bedroom door, but when he opened it, there was nothing there. The eerie occurrences, combined with the relentless dreams, left him broken, sleep-deprived, and unable to focus on anything else. His family begged him to move on, to seek professional help, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He started researching cases of people who had been wrongly declared dead, buried alive, their cries for help unheard until it was too late. The thought made his stomach turn. What if Elena had never been dead to begin with? Then one night, the dream changed. Elena wasn't just crying. This time, she was screaming, "Papa, it's dark. I can't breathe. Please help me." The sheer terror in her voice jolted him awake, and that was the moment he knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. He had to see for himself. That night, under the cover of darkness, Diego grabbed a shovel and drove to the cemetery. His hands trembled as he stepped out of the car. The cemetery was silent, the cold air thick with moisture. The only sound was the soft crunch of his footsteps on the gravel path as he approached Elena's grave. Doubt flickered in his mind. Was he really about to do this? What if he was wrong? But the memory of her desperate cries pushed him forward. He took a deep breath and plunged the shovel into the earth. The soil was heavy, damp from the recent rain. Every movement felt like a betrayal, but he kept digging, his muscles straining as he worked. Minutes turned into hours. His breaths grew ragged, and sweat mixed with dirt clung to his skin. But he didn't stop. Then his shovel hit something solid. Diego froze, his entire body shaking. He reached down, brushing away the remaining dirt until the wooden coffin was fully exposed. His fingers hovered over the lid, his breath coming in short gasps. He hesitated for just a moment before gripping the edges and prying it open. What he saw inside would haunt him for the rest of his life. Elena was still there, but something was horribly wrong. Her small body wasn't lying peacefully as he had last seen it. It was twisted and contorted. Her hands pressed against the inside of the coffin lid. Her fingernails were broken, some missing entirely, and the wood above her head was scratched and splintered. She had tried to claw her way out. Diego's stomach twisted violently, and his vision blurred as realization crashed over him. His daughter had been buried alive. He staggered backward, his breath shallow, his mind screaming in denial. Had the doctors made a mistake? Had she spent her final moments suffocating, trapped in the darkness, screaming for help that never came? Tears streamed down his face as he fell to his knees, gasping for air. His chest tightened with overwhelming grief and horror. Then, through the deafening silence, he heard it, a faint knock from inside the coffin. Diego's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced, searching for a logical explanation. But then came a whisper, "Papa." The voice was weak, trembling, but unmistakable. Diego's entire body stiffened. His heart pounded so violently it drowned out every other sound. His daughter had spoken. His hand shook as he leaned closer, his pulse roaring in his ears. "Elena," he choked out, his voice barely a whisper. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then her fingers twitched. Diego stumbled backward, his body shaking with terror. The ground beneath him felt unstable, the air suddenly too thick to breathe. Then came a gust of wind so strong it nearly knocked him over. The trees rustled violently, his car alarm blared in the distance, and the cemetery lights flickered. And then Elena's eyes opened, but the voice that came from her lips was not hers. "You shouldn't have opened it, Papa." The words were barely a whisper, but they sliced through him like a blade. The wind roared louder, the graveyard trembled, and an unbearable pressure filled the air. Diego wanted to flee, but he found himself paralyzed, his body frozen in place as his mind wrestled with disbelief and terror. The following morning, cemetery workers discovered him unconscious beside the open grave. His face was pale, his body cold, and his hands still gripped the edge of the coffin. When the authorities arrived to investigate, they carefully examined the scene, but upon opening the coffin, they found Elena's body missing. There were no footprints, no disturbed earth beyond what Diego had dug, no sign of an escape. It was as if she had never existed at all. To this day, the truth of that night remains a mystery. Some believe Diego was driven to madness by grief, that his mind had conjured a reality that never was. Others speculate something far more sinister, that Elena was never meant to be found, that she had called out to him for a reason, and that she had never truly been alone in that grave. What do you think happened? Was it the hallucination of a broken man, a tragic medical mistake, or something else entirely? Share your opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update from our channel. Thank you for your support.